In the heart of 14th century Italy, powerful city-states vied for dominance, wealth, and prestige. Their rivalries were legendary. Among the most prominent were Bologna, famous for its university, and Modena, known for its proud and independent spirit. These neighbors shared a border, but also a deep-seated political and territorial animosity that simmered just below the surface. Decades of disputes had created a fragile peace, one that could be shattered by the smallest of provocations. Life was a tapestry of commerce, art, and innovation, but the shadow of potential conflict was never far away. The people of both cities were fiercely loyal, their identities tied to the honor and standing of their home. And in Modena, that same pride burned just as brightly, creating a powder keg of regional tension. All that was needed was a spark to ignite the flames of a full-blown disagreement between these Italian powerhouses. That spark would not come from a grand declaration or a territorial seizure, but from something far more mundane. It would come from an object of little value, but immense symbolic weight, a simple oaken bucket. In the year 1325, a band of Modenese men-at-arms crossed the border under the cover of darkness. Their goal was not conquest, but a quick, audacious raid to provoke their long-standing rivals in Bologna. They slipped into the city, moving through the sleeping streets towards the central well in the main square. The well was a vital source of water, a communal hub for the citizens of Bologna. It was a symbol. Ignoring valuables, they focused on a peculiar prize, the oaken bucket used to draw water from the well. With their trophy in hand, they quickly retreated, leaving behind nothing but an empty rope and a deep insult. As dawn broke, the citizens of Bologna discovered the theft. Confusion quickly turned to collective outrage and indignation. This wasn't just a theft of property. It was a brazen mockery of Bologna's honor and security. Word spread like wildfire. The Modenese had taken their bucket, a public humiliation that could not be ignored. The stage was set for a confrontation. A simple wooden bucket had become the focal point of a major dispute. The leadership of Bologna convened in an emergency session, their chamber filled with tension and calls for retribution. Cooler heads prevailed for the moment, and they decided diplomacy should be the first course of action. A formal delegation was dispatched to Modena, tasked with a single, non-negotiable demand: return the bucket. They carried a scroll, sealed with the city's crest, outlining the insult and the required restitution. Upon arriving in Modena, the Bolognese emissaries were met with a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled scorn. They were granted an audience with the rulers of Modena, where they formally presented their city's demand. The air in the great hall was thick with anticipation, as the demand was read aloud for all to hear. The request was simple: return the stolen property, and the matter would be considered closed, a chance to avoid escalation. The honor of Bologna hung in the balance, resting entirely on the response from their arrogant neighbors. But the Modenese lords were not in a conciliatory mood. They saw the bucket not as stolen property, but as a trophy. The response from Modena was not just a refusal, but a public and humiliating dismissal of Bologna's demand. They declared that the bucket was a prize, earned through daring, and it would remain in Modena. To add insult to injury, they decided to put the humble wooden bucket on public display. It was placed in the city's main bell tower, the Torre della Ghirlandina, for all to see. From this high perch, it served as a constant reminder of Modena's successful taunt against their rivals. The dejected Bolognese emissaries returned home, their mission a complete failure, carrying only news of this new insult. When the news reached Bologna, the city erupted. The final line had been crossed. Diplomacy had failed spectacularly. The public mockery could not be answered with words, only with action. The Bolognese council reconvened, but this time, there were no calls for restraint. The mood was grim and resolute. Bologna would not beg for its honor back. It would muster its strength and retrieve it by force. Bologna declared it would raise an army. The city transformed from a center of commerce to a hub of mobilization. Blacksmiths worked day and night, their forges glowing as they repaired armor and sharpened blades for the coming confrontation. In the barracks, men-at-arms cleaned their equipment, the air filled with the scent of oil and whetstones. The great banners of Bologna, long stored away during peacetime, were brought out and unfurled in the city squares. The city's militia, composed of citizens from all walks of life, answered the call to assemble. Thousands of men began to gather in the fields outside the city walls, a sea of steel and determination. Horses were readied, supply wagons were loaded, and the entire city was consumed by the preparations. The objective was clear: march on Modena and take back the bucket, restoring Bologna's tarnished honor. News of Bologna's massive mobilization quickly reached Modena, who began their own frantic preparations in response. What began as a prank had now escalated, setting two powerful cities on a direct collision course. With preparations complete, the great army of Bologna began its march. The ground trembled under the weight of thousands. Columns of infantry stretched for miles across the Italian countryside, a river of steel flowing towards Modena. The banners of Bologna's noble families and guilds flew proudly, each a promise of retribution for the city's insult. The mood was not one of excitement, but of grim, somber resolve. This was a necessary and serious undertaking. The Bolognese force numbered over 30,000 men, an immense host raised to reclaim a single wooden bucket. In response, Modena had mustered its own forces, though they were vastly outnumbered by the approaching army. The Modenese, however, were on their home turf and defending their city's pride, giving them a fierce determination. The two armies were destined to meet near the castle of Zappolino, a strategic point between the rival cities. As the Bolognese army drew closer, the sky grew dark, mirroring the grim reality of the impending confrontation. The fate of thousands and the honor of two cities now rested on the outcome of a single day. At Zappolino, the two armies finally met. The vast Bolognese host faced the smaller but defiant Modenese force. A tense silence fell over the field, broken only by the fluttering of banners and the jangle of armor. The commanders of Bologna looked on with confidence, their superior numbers a clear advantage on the open ground. The Modenese, though outnumbered, stood firm, their lines tight and disciplined, ready to defend their city. For a moment, the sheer absurdity of the situation seemed to hang in the air. All of this for a bucket. But honor and pride were powerful motivators, and the point of no return had long since passed. The signal was given. Horns blared across the valley, a mournful sound that marked the end of the standoff. The front lines of both armies surged forward, a wave of humanity about to crash upon itself. The clash was inevitable, a brutal and chaotic affair that would last for hours and decide the dispute. History would remember this day not for its strategic genius, but for its bizarre and trivial cause. As dusk fell upon the field of Zappolino, a strange quiet descended. The great confrontation was over. Against all odds, the smaller Modenese force had achieved a stunning and decisive outcome against the massive Bolognese army. The field was a chaotic tableau of the day's events. Discarded equipment lay scattered across the landscape. The proud banners of Bologna, which had flown so high that morning, now lay trampled in the dirt. The great Bolognese army was broken, its remnants making a long and shameful retreat back to their city. The cost of the engagement was immense, with thousands of casualties on both sides of the dispute. The Modenese celebrated their improbable success, but it was a somber celebration amidst the heavy toll. The landscape itself seemed to mourn the day's events, scarred and churned by the passage of armies. It was a brutal and costly affair, a stark reminder of how petty squabbles can escalate with dire consequences. And the prize at the center of it all? The bucket. It had been successfully defended by Modena. In the aftermath, the Modenese returned to their city not just as defenders, but as triumphant victors. And with them, they brought the object that had started it all. The wooden bucket was now more than a trophy. It had become a sacred relic, a symbol of their city's courage and their incredible success against a superior foe. The bucket was taken from the bell tower and given an even greater place of honor within the city. It was suspended from the ceiling in the main nave, hanging in the very heart of their most sacred building. For the people of Modena, it represented their finest hour, a testament to their enduring spirit and defiance. Meanwhile, Bologna was a city in mourning, its pride shattered and its army defeated over a trivial object. The bucket was never returned. Bologna's massive effort had been for nothing, ending in humiliation and loss. The animosity between the two cities would continue for centuries, forever colored by this strange and costly episode. And high in the cathedral, the simple wooden bucket remained, a silent witness to the incredible drama it had caused. Centuries have passed since the fateful day at Zappolino. Empires have risen and fallen, but the bucket remains. It no longer hangs from the cathedral ceiling. Today, it is a prized exhibit in a Modenese museum. Tourists and historians now gaze upon the very object that sparked a major medieval confrontation between two cities. It stands as a testament to a time when honor was paramount, and a symbolic insult could have devastating consequences. The story seems almost unbelievable today. A conflict over a bucket seems absurd, a strange footnote in history. But it reveals a profound truth about human nature, our capacity for great conflict over seemingly small things. It wasn't about the wood or the iron hoops. It was about pride, rivalry, and the refusal to be humiliated. The bucket is a powerful reminder that the catalysts for history's dramas are not always grand or noble. Sometimes they are as simple, as common, and as unassuming as an old wooden bucket. A relic of a forgotten feud, and a story that proves history is often much stranger than we can imagine.